Games and strains. Yo, what's going on, my peoples? It's your favorite Stone Gamer, your boy Big V, here with another episode of my show called Games and Strands. I know it look a little different. I'm usually by myself. I got some special guests today on the 10th episode of my show. You know, y'all might, if you have Game Pass, you might be playing a little game called Space Jam 2, The New Legacy. These are the guys that are responsible for it. I got my guy Stephen Frost up top right here. My guy Dave Rees at the bottom left, and to my right, my boy Jeremy Williams. Say hello, everybody.
Hey guys, how you doing, man?
What's going on?
Thanks for having us.
Of course, man. Again, I really appreciate y'all. This is my 10th episode. You know, I just really started this thing, so to have y'all on here is really big for me. Definitely, I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much.
Oh, no worries.
Just to clarify, we're three of the people responsible. There's a
Sorry, three.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Absolutely. Let's jump right into that. All right. So the game is brought to us by Digital Eclipse. How long have y'all been individually with Digital Eclipse / Ocean Interactive?
Yeah. So for me, I've been here sort of the longest. I think it's been 5 years now, roughly, I think, or getting close to 5 years. So a decent run. I was before this, I was at Sega for almost 10 years,
right.
Working on Sonic and things like that. But yeah, I started out here. My first game at Digital Eclipse Other Ocean was the Street Fighter collection. We did a Street Fighter collection for Capcom, where we sort of collected 30 years of Street Fighter and kind of did a celebration, I guess, of the franchise. So that's sort of where I am. I'll hand it off to, I guess, Jeremy first to give yourself a little bit of background.
Well, all three of us actually have roots in the magazine business. So
True.
Dave, we all used to work at the same company called Future. Now it used to be called Imagine Media. I worked at PC Gamer. Dave also worked at PC Gamer. That was 20 years ago. And since then, I've gone a lot of places, but I only started with at Other Ocean about a year ago.
Okay.
When I was brought on, Dave and I were working on another game, and we were meeting with Other Ocean a lot to talk about publishing and other things, and they just ended up offering a job, and we started up there about a year ago. Haven't looked back since.
Yeah, that's the thing before Dave jumps in that I totally forgot that Jeremy brings up is that a lot of us just for weird, the industry's big, but yet it's kind of small. And we back in our much earlier years, kind of came together and we wrote about video games and PC hardware and things like that for quite a few years. And so we knew each other back then. And then at some point we kind of went off on our separate ways and then came back. And other people, actually, there's several other people at the company at Other Ocean who also were there at the same time when we were doing games, media, and journalism, and now have all come together. So it's kind of cool to have a reunion of sorts like that. But I'll hand it to Dave.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Going back to our days at Future, I started at the Future at PC Gamer, and then I moved on to Official Xbox Magazine. And so I was the disc guy at Official Xbox Magazine and helped bring that system to light way back in the day when we had demo discs that came with the magazines. So that was a very exciting time, and worked on Xbox 360. And eventually moved on with some other projects on PlayStation. And the interesting thing about it is we worked with Digital Eclipse back in the day. So when I was at Future, Digital Eclipse was our developer for the discs. And we had a team and we were using their engine. So when we moved into development, it was just a very natural fit. Jeremy was the UI guy, for example, on the discs or on our Project Core with PlayStation. And that used what is the sort of beginnings of the engine we're using today to create projects and products at Digital Eclipse. So it's a very neat little story there.
It's funny because now that I think about it, like when I first started Sega, my first project was with Digital Eclipse because we did the Genesis collection. I forgot about that. So anyway, I think that's why we all ended up here somehow, because we all, worked with Digital Eclipse in some form or capacity and just, friends, right? It's friends working with friends, and it's a good environment. So you go where your friends are, sort of. You want to hang with them and have fun doing stuff. So I think that's why we kind of all ended up.
Yeah, our studio director, who was another member of the development team for Space Jam, Mike Micah, he worked at the same magazine company back then. Worked on Next Generation magazine, and we all, I think, have known Mike since forever, just because not just the magazine stuff, but we've been involved with Digital Eclipse, at least in the periphery, for a while, and he's always been sort of at that company.
Okay, so it's kind of like that's what doesn't even feel like work when y'all working with all of y'all the friends and everything. Y'all been around for a while, right?
It's the great thing. Like I can't speak for every game studio, but this is a tight little group of people who all sort of have the same roots and nostalgia for the same era of games. And yeah, we're very much. It's a great group of people, very supportive, a lot of freedom. It's a cool company.
Yeah, I would say that, like, game development is very difficult, and if you're just in it for the 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and then you go home and you check out, it's very difficult sort of being that. So, and especially when you're pressed with, challenging timelines to finish the game and things like that, you got to really have a good team. And, if you're friends with the team members and you guys know each other for a long time, everyone is willing to step up and fill in the missing, gaps and work the extra effort and things like that. And, I know that we couldn't have gotten Space Jam, as an example, done even remotely to what it is today without, these guys and their hard work. And I think everyone, because they know each other, we know we're all invested, we're sort of a family. And so we all just chip in and we can accomplish a lot more than, what you'd normally be able to. So I'm really proud of these guys for that.
And speaking of nostalgia, let's take it back. What was you guys' first game system?
Oh man, you Dave or Jeremy, you want to answer that first? I'll let you guys answer, then I'll go.
Did I? I mean, you must have had a system before me, Dave, because you're so much older than I am.
Oh man, that's not true. That's not true. Not that much older. I go back to the Mattel Intellivision, if you can believe it. If you even know what that system is.
Yes. I never heard of that.
What's that?
I've never heard of that.
Never heard of that. So
yeah,
back in, that was 1979 is when I was starting to play games. And it's there's currently this product called the Amico, which is the sort of a reimagining of Intellivision.
Okay.
And it's slated to come out later this year. We'll say, not sure about that, but basically this was a system that competed with Atari.
Okay.
Back in the day, the Atari 2600.
Okay.
But it had sort of it had a lot of advantages over Atari. The animations of the characters were way more smooth, and they had this controller that kind of looked like a telephone with a rotary disc on it, and buttons that you'd press that were actually numbers, and it was a really funky looking thing, and it even had a wood grain finish on it. And that's, as soon as I saw that, I saw my uncles would play it, and we'd have family get-togethers. When I saw that, I was like, I was in. I was glued to that system. I had to get one of my own eventually, and that's sort of what kicked everything off. And then since then, I had every console under the sun all the way up till today. So
I remember the Intellivision, particularly because I went to a friend of mine's house and they had one, and it spoke. Like, that blew my mind. And I don't know if it was like
Televoice.
Yeah, Televoice. Yeah.
Like they're playing, I don't know, a football game or something, and it spoke, and it could just say whatever it wanted to, and I was blown away. I wish I could have had one just for that alone. But I had the Atari 2600. My grandmother got that for me back in the day, around the same time, late 70s. And I know, looking back on those games now, they look really chunky and blocky, but at the time, it was absolutely incredible to play a game on the television and to control what you were seeing. They took some imagination, but that's not just that can be a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's what helped them. Like, I think growing up that era, like you had to have a good imagination because you're filling in all the gaps, in the world around it, right? And that was what's compelling about it, because the graphics themselves were pretty basic in form. I didn't start into consoles until later. Like, I was more of a PC guy, computer guy early on. So the Commodore stuff. I switched over to I think my first first computer though was like a TRS-80 from Radio Shack or something like that. And then I got a Commodore 64, and then I switched over to just PC, and I was like PC Master Race kind of thing. And then I thought it was all cool with my 16 colors and things like that. And then I went over to a friend's house who had an Amiga 500, and he had that set up, and that like melted my brain. Like he had like Dragon's Lair running and some other arcade games, and that was so light years ahead of where the PCs were at that time. And cheaper overall. I think it was like $900 for like the Amiga 500 and a monitor or something like that, roughly around. And I paid, I think, for my PC at the time like $1,600 or $2,000 or something.
Amiga
like that.
had amazing sound too.
Oh yeah, he had to hook up to a stereo. It was phenomenal. Like it was like my childhood brain was liquid when I left. And I'm like, I must get an Amiga 500. So I immediately just left sort of the standard PC stuff and just focused on. I still have the C64, but the Amiga 500 was like sort of where it's at. And then I started to transition to consoles, the NES, time frame. I was living overseas. I was living overseas at the time, so games were really slow to get there for the NES and things like that. But eventually got an NES, and and just fell in love with Mario and the other things. But for a long time there, I was more on the PC side. And then I think when the 16-bit generation kind of came in, the Genesis and the Super Nintendo and stuff, like the Genesis, I was really hardcore for. Like when I saw that, I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. So I was a big Sega Genesis nut at the beginning. And then from that point on, I think I just predominantly focused most of my time on consoles. And I still am predominantly a console player. Maybe like 20% of my time is PC gaming, but most of my time is console. So initially at the start, I was a big PC guy, transitioned over to console. I'm sort of still that now.
What was yours, Big V?
Mine was the Nintendo.
Yeah.
Nintendo. That was
Which
my
one?
first.
Yeah.
The very first one back in like, I think 88, I had my first one. 88, 89. Yeah, that was my first one, Nintendo. I had it when I had the Power Pad, when you had the track and field with it and you had to run on it, man. Like that's what I remember. Like, and the Power Glove as well. Man, I always told people, like, when the Wii U came out, it reminded me of the Power Glove, so to speak, with the mechanics and everything. That was, kind of nostalgic for me when that came out. And speaking,
I will tell you.
Go ahead.
I was gonna tell you an ironic, weird twist. I dug it out, and actually about about a month ago, I was playing the Power Pad, and I came to the realization that I'm out of shape. Because I was playing. I can't remember which one it was. It wasn't track and field. It was another one. But it was difficult, and you're running on that pad for like 5 minutes, and it's just like it's a cardio workout. I'm
telling you, I think back, I don't even know how I did it as a child. It used to be so tiring to me when I had the Power Pad, man. I love the idea of it, and it was great for back then, but I don't think I could do it now. Definitely no.
Oh yeah, it's a whole other level. But I end up ironically, just because the NES, I have a lot of NES games, and since they're so like classic and very simple, I still play them a lot just to get like ideas and reference. Like if we're doing games like like a Space Jam or something simple, going back and looking at like these simpler games and how they handled it, I think helps out a lot. So you can still learn a lot from that era of games, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we did a lot of research for Space Jam around classic old school brawlers. That was the most fun I had on the project was just playing the old games and taking notes and applying what we could to Space Jam.
And speaking, go ahead.
I was just gonna say to you, I don't know if you know and some people don't know this, but the genesis of that game was a contest, and I don't know if you know this or not, but back in December of last year, Microsoft held the contest with us, and basically people could contribute their ideas for the game. And so you could put whatever you want in there. We came up with some, our artists came up with some mock-up images of the game, so you could kind of have some thoughts of what it like for different types of genres, if it was like a strategy game or if it was like an action game or a fighting game. And then you could go in and fill out the form and then write your game idea. And we got like thousands and thousands of ideas. And then out of those, we had to whittle them down, which took a while. Like,
Okay.
we had to whittle down. We had to whittle down 2 winners. So one, like a child, a minor, and then an adult. And then we had to take those 2 winning ideas and then like merge them together and then make a game out of it. So it wasn't as clear cut as like, oh, sometimes people ask us, oh, why did you guys make a brawler sort of thing? But part of the impetus for that is this contest and trying to pull out like what these winning entries, sparked our ideas and how they could come together. Because, even at one point early on, there was a music rhythm element. One of the entries was like a rhythm music element. We thought, oh, maybe we'll end up making a rhythm music game, but it didn't pan out like that because that didn't end up being the winner. But it was kind of cool because there was a winner. The child was from India, and then there was a winner, an adult here in I think he was in SoCal, Southern California. And so I think that's the interesting story about it, because the challenge for us isn't just making a game within a relatively short amount of development time before the movie hits. It's the challenge of like, well, there's this contest. There's 2 winners, and then we have to take those ideas and make them into an experience somehow. So,
and I was going to ask y'all, like, comparing, the first Space Jam game to this one, what made y'all go in the direction of a brawler versus, the traditional one, that had the basketball element? Me personally, I'm so glad that y'all didn't go in the basketball element, and I'm glad that y'all went with the brawler style, because I think it surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that was the case too. And I think, I can speak for Jeremy and Dave that obviously the easier route or the most obvious route is just to make another basketball game.
Right,
and we sort of had a thought about it. But I think because we were working with both Microsoft and Warner Brothers, and I think the general thought out of them is like, let's try to do something different. You know what I mean? Like there's bound to be other, there's tons of other basketball games. It's the obvious thing. Does it, just because the movies is predominantly based on basketball, is that the ideal sort of option?
Right.
And because of the contest, and it's sort of, I think, a desire to somewhat do something different. It didn't have to be a brawler, but just something different outside of a traditional basketball game. That sort of sparked the idea. And also, all of us, Dave, Jeremy, myself, Mike, and the rest of like, we're old school guys. We love those old school arcade brawlers. And so when those kind of winning options kind of percolate to the top, and that's what it seemed like people were interested in, we kind of glammed onto that. We're like, oh, that makes sense. And we love that genre, that classic going into arcade, dropping a quarter in, that fun afternoon experience with your friends, and that's sort of where it kind of grew up from.
If you ask me, it meshes a little better with the movie too, because the movie is where the basketball game happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the end of the movie. There's the big game, right? But along the way, you've got all these trials and tribulations, and you've got to, work through, various combat scenarios or whatever. And that's kind of what we ended up being. Was we're before the movie actually gets started, or before the sequence leading to the basketball game. So,
I like it.
All that said, I don't think any game developer would watch that movie and not want to make that basketball game. Like, that was cool. You could imagine we didn't get a whole lot of access to the movie before it came out. Like we saw very little of it, and being able to go see the movie after we released the game was a lot of fun. And when it turned out that Dom's game that he wrote was a big part of the storyline, that was cool. That would be a fun one to make.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I posted the clip on Twitter of my kids playing the game, man, and that's how this whole thing ended up coming about. I think Steven, he saw it. I think another guy that worked at Digital Eclipse, Mike Mika.
Yeah, but Mike, it's Mike, yeah.
He saw it too, and my kids enjoy it. I enjoy it, man. It's nostalgia. It's very fun. The controls, man, the reaction to everything. It's just spot on. Like I just can't say it enough, man. It's just so spot on, man. I love it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think that was the key thing we wanted. And I think that's why we sort of pushed, even though it was a bit challenging at the end to have the 3 players be able to play at the same time. There's always challenges. Originally there was no sort of the obligation to make it multiplayer and stuff, but it just made sense because with a brawler, especially a brawler, that genre, you want to sit there with your family or your friends, and just kind of have a escape from the world that we're in right now, right? Our pandemic world, and kind of just play together and have fun together. And I think that's what sort of drove kind of the idea of the game, as far as like, you know, having the basketball and being able to pass it around as in multiplayer, and being able to do things as multiplayer and things like that. So I think that was a good push. And, you know, Dave and Jeremy were pulling their hair out a little bit at the end, dealing with some of these multiplayer issues that sprung up. But I think in the end, it was really good. And I think a lot of people, you know, who are especially stuck at home are playing it together, which is awesome, you know?
Yes. Jeremy, I want to ask you, you know, I did some homework, and I found out that you actually had a Kickstarter for one of your products for a game frame.
Yeah.
And
That's amazing.
I'm real big on people that, you know, do their own thing independent. And I saw that you sold around like 700 of those things, and you personally made them with you and your wife.
Yeah, and my kids. Yeah, we all did that. That was 8 years ago. That was a while ago now. That was a blast. Yeah, that's when Dave mentioned another project that we worked on, this PlayStation project called Core. When that wrapped up for me, I left and I did the game frame thing on Kickstarter. That was a blast. Yeah, I wanted to display video game artwork on my wall, but I didn't want to have to choose a game. So I made a display that could basically show a 16 by 16 pixel grid of any sprite that I wanted, any animation. And I coded that and did the industrial design, and then I made every single one of those. It took me weeks.
Jared's a good technical guy.
On average, how long would it take just to make one?
Oh, 5 minutes. It wasn't that bad.
Okay.
It wasn't that bad.
Okay.
But it was just it was repetitive. It was a long time. It was just the same thing over and over and over again.
You spent some time like on the design of the thing.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
That takes a lot of time, and you know, finding how you're going to get all the parts, you know, and
exactly.
who's going to manufacture them. So.
Yeah, I had to work with a local laser cut company to make all kinds of parts for that thing. It was cool though, and then I ended up redesigning it just from scratch, and I ended up having it like I handed off the manufacturing that time around, and I just handled the sales. But it was cool. That was a cool chapter. I was really proud of that. Mike, our studio director, had like 4 of them in his office. I think he was my biggest benefactor.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness you made it back then, because if you made that now, it probably cost like $2,000 for each one. You know.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, Dave, I did some homework on you. I found out that you did some voice acting on some games like Call of Duty, Big Red 1, Ghost Recon. You know
that I think that's a different Dave Rees.
Is it Dave? Oh,
that's a different Dave Rees.
Oh man, I apologize there. My apologies.
It's okay.
Man.
There's a few of us out there.
You know, I noticed that, man, because it was a Dave Rees Snell, and he said he was just going by Dave Rees. It was crazy. It's a lot of y'all out there.
Oh no!
I did some voice acting for some of the mini games.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Back in the day.
Okay,
that's true. Yeah,
well,
not just voice acting. You were in them.
Yeah, that's true. I was a star. I was on camera. What was the name? This little game called Mother Blaster.
Yeah,
was that it?
Yeah.
Where it was kind of like an asteroids meets. How would you describe it?
Like Space War.
Space War, right? So, and there was this black hole, and you'd have to fly around, and you could get sucked into the black hole. And then there was this big mothership that came in, and alongside of it, there were different missions, and in between them, there were little video clips. And I played a military captain, I just did a little bit of acting in between, and man, it was kind of embarrassing. And there were a lot of bloopers. And unfortunately, Jeremy put together a blooper reel, and it was sort of this hidden bonus that you'd see this blooper reel if you finish the game. And and then we did a game. What was the Tron-like game? Psych Out?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
It was and it was really fun. We all of us did some voice acting for that. So there were different things that would happen when you I think it was when you die, when you'd lose the game. We had some various quips and things like that going on. So But that's really all the voice acting I've ever done.
Hey, that's better than me, because at least I should feel bad because you probably got some speaking roles. When I was at Sega, the VO line things that I got were a guy in a jail cell getting electrocuted, and a guy, I can't remember the scenario, but getting stabbed. These are the sorts of like high quality AAA roles that I get for my VO talents.
And speaking of Sega, you say you worked on a couple of Sonic games. Let's talk about your time at Sega and everything that you worked on over there.
Yeah, I mean, that was like almost a decade. And
Right.
Like I said before, when I first started out, I actually worked with Digital Eclipse. We did this collection for the Sega Genesis. And so we compiled like the best Sega Genesis games.
Right.
And then we had interviews and behind the scenes. And it was like kind of the early days of really Digital Eclipse doing that to that degree. And so that was kind of cool that, not knowing then that I would eventually work at the company, but, they're always great guys to work with. And then I worked on this strategy game called Universe at War, which is, I think at the time, probably the first Xbox 360 game that allowed for computer versus Xbox gameplay, because I think Microsoft had Shadowkeep that was one, but we were the only like people outside that who could play Xbox against PC way back then, which was a huge nightmare, but kind of a cool thing to do. And then ironically, before I was at Sega, I worked at Activision, and we had a lot of the Marvel licenses, the like Iron Man and things like that.
Yeah,
and
right.
Yeah, that stuff didn't pan out. But when I went to Sega, a lot of the Activision stuff lapsed, and then Sega picked up the rights to like Thor, Hulk, Iron Man, like all that the initial kind of first Marvel movies that came out theatrically. So yeah, I worked on Iron Man, and I worked on Thor, and
you worked on the Hulk, right? On PlayStation 3.
Yeah, Hulk. Yeah, Hulk. Yeah. So yeah, all that stuff for sure. And then I worked on some, in-house stuff like Shinobi, if you like the Shinobi Ninja games. Actually, some of the other folks who work in our other studio up in Washington, because we have another studio up in Washington that's a Digital Eclipse studio, and a couple of those people I worked with back in the day when I was at Sega as well, and we worked on a Shinobi game with them. So that was kind of cool. And then the tail end of that, the last few years was working on Sonic and a few of the Sonic games like the Mario and Sonic and things like that. So that was kind of a cool way to do it. And I'd probably still be there, but at that time, Sega, because they were doing getting into movies, the Sonic movie was being talked about, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and more merchandising and stuff. And they felt we should move down to Southern California because that's where all the movies are, that's where all the merchandising is and things like that. And decided not to go with them, decided to stay here. I like it up here and things like that. So, but that was cool because I took some time off and relaxed because, the last few years were pretty busy and stressful. And then, ended up with here at Digital Eclipse.
Right. Okay. Nice. So you mentioned Activision. I want to talk about, the current situation going on with Activision with this new lawsuit that's being filed against them. What are y'all thoughts? I want to get everybody's thoughts on that certain situation. And have you have any of you guys ever been a part of any company that acted as such?
Yeah, that's a tough situation. I've been reading and trying to keep up with the whole Activision Blizzard stuff, and it's it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate sort of this sort of stuff happens in this industry. I mean, it happens in a lot of industries too, but this is our industry, and it still happens a lot. And it saddens me quite a bit. I've never really come across, I guess, fortunately, have not been coming across any of those situations or been exposed to any of that stuff in my career. And I think I just been blessed to be sort of around good-hearted people, like up and up, like good folks, both women and men, who have been professional and who have worked hard and put their heart and souls into this. So, like I said, I've just been blessed to not to have to be exposed to it. My heart goes out to folks who are in those situations and the difficulty, because it is we have this situation where, we have a sort of a separation of upper management and employees coming in, and we also have an age gap of older folks who are running these companies and younger folks who are coming in, and it leads to some unfortunate dynamics and things like that. But it just makes me feel sad, and I wish it didn't occur. It makes the industry just look bad in general. It makes us look unprofessional. These people are just who do this sort of stuff are not great, obviously, folks. But I just think knock on wood, like we were talking about here, like being a family at Digital Eclipse, that's the work environment that I want to be a part of, and where everyone kind of cares for each other and treats each other with respect, regardless of your gender or anything else. And hopefully we'll keep it that way. I don't know if anyone else has anything to chime in, but that's sort of.
I would just say I echo everything you said, and I have a group of friends, and we stay in touch and talk about everything that goes on in the industry. And this has been a topic that we've been talking about, and I tell them how lucky I feel right now that I work with this company, Digital Eclipse, Other Ocean, because it's such a great group. It's such good people, and like Steven said, we're like a family, and none of these issues are ever a problem. So
I've never seen behavior like what I read about at Activision in any company I've worked for. If I did, I probably wouldn't be there very long. And I just one last point, just want to thank and congratulate the people who spoke out, because that's not easy. Like, there were repercussions for that, and we need more of that. And so props to them.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely, 1000%. My heart goes out to anybody affected by the situation as well, man. Just terrible to hear. I love Activision and what they bring to the table, but I can no longer support it. I recently just uninstalled the Cold War. I won't be buying the new COD this season that'll be coming out later on this year. I can't get behind it. That's just my part that I'm doing to not support it.
Yeah, and the thing that's not to beat a dead horse, but this transcends to even smaller companies and things.
Absolutely.
I mean, the bigger companies definitely get the brunt of the attention because there's an expectation that they have the resources to deal with this. But in this industry and other industries, like even smaller teams, are exposed to this, which is unfortunate. And I applaud, as Jeremy was saying, the people who speak out, because that's how you get the spotlight on the issues, and the people who are responsible, sort of have repercussions, right? And have to sort of answer to what has happened. And hopefully, in the end, despite the issues that have happened, that there's some sort of a positive outcome and it doesn't happen, to other people. So cross fingers, in that regard.
Yes, absolutely, man. What's next for Digital Eclipse? We got the Space Jam Legacy game out right now, which is phenomenal in my opinion. What is next? I know y'all cooking up something. I know y'all working on a lot of retro
so many
stuff.
Things.
Yeah, absolutely,
we do.
Which I love the retro stuff. I love it.
Yeah, we do. We do. Thank you. I mean, that is sort of like sort of our bread and butter, but we're definitely expanding. We sort of did a round of sort of, I wouldn't just call it fundraising, but raising up for the company to get people invested in the company. And
I want to talk about that, because y'all raising a whole lot of money. I saw Mike tweeted out like a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And I think y'all might have like little less than 50 something days left around about now until it's over with. Talk about that, man. How great has that been to get the support that y'all need?
Oh, it's been great. Like, it's been so exciting. I think we're one of the last studios to really still specialize and focus a lot on sort of the what people call retro games or classic games. It is a demographic that's predominantly, or a type of game that's generally tied to an older demographic, us curmudgeons in our late 30s, 40s and things like that. But just from a historic kind of perspective from the industry, it's important that we continue to educate and showcase these older games to people who are even just getting into video games, right? Or who are a younger generation of gamers, because there's a lot that can be learned from them. It's the same thing. It'd be like the equivalent of if we threw away all of the, the Casablancas and Gone with the Winds and, and all these classic older black and white movies, the old musicals, and like, most people are not going to watch like The Sound of Music or anything like that in today's day and age for the most part. But it's still important. They still circulate that stuff. They still re-release that stuff on new formats, and you can get it easily if you want to do it. And the games are not like that. We lose so many games. People don't preserve this stuff. After a certain age, you can find that like maybe one person has it on a hard drive. It's an indie developer and they worked on a game. There's two people and one person has it on the hard drive, and then the hard drive is lost and then the game's gone. And we lose so much, cool and interesting things throughout this long history of video games. And I don't want to digress, but like one example of this is we last year we did a Samurai Showdown collection that sort of collected the whole Samurai Showdown collection of arcade games for fans, and we were able to release a version of Samurai Showdown, the final version of Samurai Showdown that was never released before. It was never released in the public. It was released in arcades for a very limited amount of time as a test, but then disappeared. And the only reason we were able to get it is because someone had it on a hard drive in storage at home. They took it home with them back in the day. And if they hadn't done that, that game would have been lost to history, right? But just through our efforts and finding out who these people are and conversations with these people, we discovered this happens and we were able to restore it. And now there is a all new Samurai Showdown game in existence that people can play, right? And that's why it's so important. I mean, that's crazy, right? As a Samurai Showdown fan, imagining that like this crazy game that could have not existed or not been able to be seen. And so that's why we feel our jobs are very important, not only just to do stuff like Space Jam, which sort of tries to capture that nostalgic old school kind of gaming experience, right? Even for like your kids are playing it, like kind of that simpler time, right? Like that happy, simpler time, but also to educate and to create releases that, have people fondly remember, or people who are like, oh yeah, I remember that game. I never played it because, I wasn't alive then, but here's my chance to do it. And so we were one of the last, folks to really focus on that stuff. A lot of companies come to us because we're one of the folks who specialize in emulation and focus on that type of game release and things like that. And we've kind of grown our fan base and the popularity of our titles and things like that. But we don't want to just work, while we love working for publishers, we want to do more stuff on our own. And we have a lot of ideas about things we want to release. So this opportunity of sort of raising this money allows us to go out and acquire, the rights to these games that we want to create stuff for. And then we can build them and, either create a new version of a game for fans of the old one, or put a twist on something to get newer fans interested, right? So the fact that it's been doing so well really, warms my heart. It shows that people care about what we do, and the fans, speak with their wallets, not just with their mouths, and that they're contributing to the future of the company. And obviously, we don't want to let them down, but this whole thing allows us to, like I said, go after properties that we want to go out and release a lot more games each year, hopefully. Knock on wood. Dave and Jeremy, I don't know if you guys want to.
No, just to echo what you said. If with this funding is change, it's a game changer because it gives us autonomy, and it gives us much more choice in terms of like what games we want to reimagine, revisit, and but in terms of what's next, Mike tweeted 9 days ago that he wants to hear from you. He wants to hear from all of the people out there. What do they want? Because now we can afford to go out and make whatever we want and re-envision whatever we want.
I saw
your ideas.
Yes, I did. I told him. I tweeted out because I like both consoles. I'm an Xbox gamer and I do PlayStation as well. A game that is not on Game Pass output and nobody's doing nothing with. I don't know what's going on. I would love the Godfather games to come back out if possible. Silent Hill, man. Like all the old ones.
Silent Hill, yeah.
All the old ones, man. Just good stuff like that, man. Yeah.
No, that stuff's great. Like especially the Silent Hills, which is always has a very rabid fan base, and and that's a Konami property. We work very closely with Konami. We do a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh games together, and we've done a lot of stuff with them in the past. They are great partners. We love them to death. So, hopefully in the future, we can work with them on some future stuff that we're mutually excited about.
Yeah, it's not just like preservation either. I mean, although it's primarily preservation, it is also like, allowing people to play the games, yes, but also updating some of the gameplay, limitations and mechanics, which don't all age well. Like we have come to expect save points in games, or the ability to save a game alone, let alone save points, and so we can add those features to it. On the Blizzard collection, you can literally watch the game and jump in at any time. You can watch the game real time. It's not a video, and you can jump in at any time. And so it's just like adding things like that to old titles gives them all new life, and I love that aspect of the preservation.
Yeah, I think chiming on that, I think it's also our whole thing is that we look at whenever we do these games, we think about the intention of the original development teams, and if they were shackled by either technical limitations or time limitations and things like that. Okay. Oftentimes we'll talk to them. We did a Disney collection which features Aladdin and the Lion King.
I saw that.
We actually talked with. Yeah, I talked with the development team. We talked with the development team and asked them, like, are there things you would change? Or, because Aladdin had a very short development cycle. Back then, you couldn't do patches or anything because it was on a cartridge. So whatever you put on the cartridge, that was it, right? And so we asked them, like, are there things that you would have fixed or would have improved? And we did it. Like, we went in and we did that stuff, and so now in that collection, you have a better version of Aladdin that is, thanks to the development team and their suggestions and stuff, inspired like fixes and improvements, and are things that if back then you could have done patches, they might have done it, but obviously they couldn't. So we can, as people who love these IPs and care about these IPs, we can now go in, fix the problems, add the stuff that they want to, make adjustments to things, and then create a version of the game that the development team originally was hoping for and never got, but now they do. So I think people see some of the collections out there and they think, oh, it's just a bunch of games in a box, right? But really, like the amount of like time and effort we put into it, like, we had games in this SNK 40th collection where some of the first arcade games that had like digitized voice, right? Yeah. Way back in the day. And no one had really accurately previously captured what the voice files were, the audio files were. So we had to go to Japan and to the small town. We sent a guy out. He tracked down the board that we needed. And they, not only that, but we convinced them to allow us to borrow this very old, rare arcade board so that we could take it back to our offices and then verify the audio files and integrate that into the game to have finally a version of the game that is accurate to the original game. So like there's there's a lot of effort. It's kind of like the Indiana Jones, right? We have this archaeology aspect of it that most people don't see. But before, even we kind of dig into a game, we spend so much time investigating it. Like Dave and Jeremy were saying about even for Space Jam, which is just a brawler, but we spent so much time. We looked at so many brawlers, right? Not even just relying on our past experience, but just playing them. And that's just a brawler. But, imagine like a franchise that's like 30 years old, 40 years old, right? Trying to go back in time and find people who have, artwork or worked on it. It's very difficult, right? And so that's a big challenge of our jobs, but it's something we really enjoy and we put our heart into. And that's, I think, what makes our collections and game releases, a step above a lot of other people's, is that attention to detail. It's that investment of time and effort to try to find things that people haven't found before, right?
So did y'all do any work on DuckTales?
DuckTales, we did Disney Afternoon Collection. So we did the collection that had the original DuckTales for the Nintendo Entertainment System in there. So if you look that up, that's one of our early releases. Okay. Yeah, so Disney Afternoon Collection was us early on. And I think we were talking about that earlier because I think the team did a really good job of that game of like capturing the feel of the cartoons, the look and feel of the cartoons.
It was fantastic. Yes.
Yeah. And so that's what we always try to do. Is like, what makes these games special, or what makes them kind of cool and stuff like that. But yes, we did that one for sure.
And going back to y'all saying that y'all tested a few games, when y'all was trying to create the new Space Jam game, and going back and playing old stuff. Was Double Dragon one of those games?
Yeah, I mean the obvious stuff. I mean, I'll let Dave and Jeremy talk about what the ones they gave, but we played. I mean, I played all the classes again, like Double Dragon, Streets of Rage, Final Fight, right? All the core ones for sure. But then you get into these obscure Japanese arcade games that not even released in the United States. What is the baseball? Oh, what's the baseball one? Baseball Man. Oh man, I forget what it's called. Do you remember Dave or Jeremy? The baseball.
There was a baseball themed brawler.
Yeah, the one with the guy, he's like a baseball bat, and it's like it was in the airport, and we all talk, what is it called? It's like Baseball Action Man or baseball something. Anyway, we were messing around with that too. And that's kind of this weird, obscure Japanese game where you play this guy with a baseball bat, and it's like a brawler. It has a really funny name, like Baseball Action Man or something. I can't believe I forgot about it. But so, we play like the normal ones that you'd expect to play, including Double Dragons versus Battletoads, things like that. But we try to step back even further and go and look at more of the obscure games that did stuff well, but maybe a lot of people don't know about it. And that really helps out a lot. I don't know, Dave and Jeremy, what other games you guys?
I'd like to mention Battle Circuit.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Capcom, which
that's
one that in the Dungeons and Dragons Hysteria.
Those are excellent games. Yeah, all the Capcom Dungeons and Dragon games are really good.
Arcade, the old school arcade brawlers. Those were two heavy influencers. And for me personally, Streets of Rage 4, the more recent release, which we couldn't pull off anything close to that. Phenomenal game though, and I spent a lot of time playing it and feeling it. There's a lot of inspiration from that as well.
It gives me Streets of Rage vibes when I play it, believe it or not, man. I get Streets of Rage vibes and also Double Dragon. That's why I asked. Yeah,
we wanted to do some mechanics that were we tried out some mechanics that were Streets of Rage-ish, Streets of Rage 4 in particular, but it didn't quite work out for what we needed in the end. But yeah.
Jeremy, what else? Anything else you want to call out?
No. I just thought it was cool that you mentioned Double Dragon, because that's where a lot of the timelines kind of begin when you look at this genre. Because we did a lot, as you guys have said, we did a lot of research, and a lot of the timelines start at that game. And I remember it very fondly. Played it on my NES as well as in the arcade. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny because most people they look at a brawler and they think it's sort of a pretty basic game, but there's a lot of intricacy involved with that and how it feels and how we spend so much time how to and kudos to Dave and Jeremy for getting the feel down and button presses and how fast things should be and things at the tail end. We had this thing where Dave and I were talking where for the longest time, the game was a situation where once you're starting to do a combo against someone, let's say you're facing to the left, you were sort of stuck in that direction kind of for the duration of the combo. It wasn't easy to switch to the other direction to take down an enemy on the facing to the right. And later on, we were like, there's something going on. And I was talking with Dave about it, Jeremy about it. And Jeremy's like, oh yeah, that's like an easy adjustment, and it makes the game feel better because you can kind of turn the directions quicker. And so there's lots of little things like that, or we had so many discussions about just jumping attacks and how far you jump and so that's what I say to people who do brawlers. Brawlers are not easy. The general idea of a brawler might be fundamentally easy to articulate to people, but the feel of it and how the characters interact with each other and the timing of stuff makes a huge difference between something that feels sluggish and something that feels really responsive, and kudos to especially Dave and Jeremy, who spent so much time iterating on that stuff and listening to especially me sort of complain about little things and adjusting it, and Mike as well, because Mike did the boss fights, a bulk of the boss fight stuff, and so it was definitely a concerted, a big team experience in trying to get it right. But yeah, I don't suggest for people thinking I want to make a simple game, I'll make a brawler. Don't don't think that it's super easy. It's actually more intricate than you think it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of states involved, especially with the player character. And we also have to give a lot of props to Christina, who did all of the artwork for the game.
Amazing. Yeah.
Every single pixel she designed. And in doing so came up with, a lot of the number of frames and animations and really helped with timings. Came up with, had a real clear vision for the game.
Yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, for Christina's standpoint, like it's a lot of times you have artists who are artists, right? They aren't necessarily proficient in the type of game or the genre, right? Like you're told in the game, like, go make me a desk, right? Or whatever, a model of a desk. But what Christina really helped in the team with is like understanding the genre. She had a lot of games that she had played that we haven't even heard of that she shared with us as far as things we should try and look at. And she understood the connection between the timing of things, the frames, and how it should play out. And having an artist be able to understand that with engineers who are able to act upon that and sort of iterate on that is what allows you to make a good feeling experience in a short amount of time. Otherwise, they fight against each other, and you have an artist like, no, I need it to look like this. And then you have engineers like, well, it's not possible to make it feel good with this number of frames and things like that. So it's a blessing sort of to have people who understand the genre, who come together. And like I said before, it's like, this was a short, like the contest was over we found the winners in end of January. So we only had like a 4-month or so development cycle, 4.5-month development cycle.
I was just going to ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a crazy a short amount of time to do something like this. We could have easily took an easy route and done like a lot of other different genres, but we really wanted to sort of do this. And the only way we were able to do is to have an artist, like I said, who understands the genre and the type of art. And she's a huge fan of the Capcom brawlers. And then, we had Mike, Dave, and Jeremy as engineers who not only understand how the game functions and stuff like that, but are passionate enough to like spend the extra time on the nights and weekends to just make 110%, right? Because it's like, a lot of games ship with the 90%, you never get to that 10% and it doesn't quite feel right. But, these guys really doubled down and tried to make it, given our time constraints, tried to make it the best possible experience we can. I have no doubts that given the number of people who worked on this and the time we have, like we did the best that we could.
It helps
and that's an art.
It being in a small team, it's a lot like making games in the 80s. It really is like it's our game. Like if so we have a sense of ownership over it, and so I think that helps us want to put in the extra hours in order to get it just as close to perfect as we could get it.
We looked at the original. Sorry.
Go ahead. You fine.
When you look at the sort of original concepts and ideas and sort of how the project was spec'd or scoped out originally, we did a lot more in the end. Like we didn't have to add a story, we didn't have to have cut scenes and all that stuff. But it's just something we had to do.
You also have to understand we developed this during COVID. From our own homes.
Talk about it. Absolutely.
We never saw each other in the office, and we were making a co-op multiplayer game. So that was tricky. Like there were definitely some components, some aspects that we had to figure out solutions to that nobody had ever figured out before. We had to figure out a way to play co-op over the internet, and that was it's not something we knew how to do at the very beginning. And it's not something that even the game supports. We had to find other tools in order to do that. And that was the only way we could really play test as much as we needed to get that in, let alone just like sharing feedback with each other. It's all over Slack. It's all over Zoom or the internet.
Yeah, it's tougher because it's not like, I can roll over to Dave and say, hey, look at this, or Jeremy, like, look at this on my screen, right? Which takes like 5 seconds. It's more of like, hey, do you guys have time? You're like, well, we're right in the middle of something. And then you got to set up a Zoom call or a Slack call. And then you want to make it worthwhile, right? And to worth their time. And so a lot of things become more difficult and you get into a lot more meetings, was a lot draining. And not only do you have a lot more meetings, but when you're in meetings, you're not working, right? So something that could take like 2 minutes of me going over to Dave or Jeremy's desk and like talking about it ends up taking like an hour, right? Because we have to articulate it and then show each other and then iterate on it and things like that. So I can understand even, the larger scale games, how they've been impacted by sort of this pandemic, and having hundreds of people try to work together in remote distancing is just ungodly difficult. We have a much smaller team, and we had even then like a lot of challenges, and we had time challenges too, because like Christina is not in the United States, so she's in a different time zone, and things like that. And we have QA folks are in a different times. So you have like multiple time zones and trying to deal with that. And that gets really, you're trying to find that sweet spot of like, is it really late for them or is it really early for us? And what works better? And so it's definitely not easy. And my sympathy and heart goes out to the folks who are trying to create any sort of game. Game development just by itself is difficult. And in this sort of situation where you're remote and you can't engage with people so easily, it makes every step of the whole thing, even more complex.
And I want to tip my hat to you guys just based off that alone, just, not being in the same, studio together and not able to bounce these ideas. Like you said, it maybe take 2 minutes in the same studio, may take an hour, man. That is impressive for you guys to put together a game in that short amount of time and not, for lack of a better term, not cyberpunk it, so to speak. And we appreciate y'all, we really appreciate y'all, as customers who buy the game, who play the game, man. It means a lot when the developer takes us into consideration, and not just, release a 88% game or 85% game with a day one patch. We appreciate the game being at you guys 100%. We really do.
Yeah, just from the standpoint that these are the sorts of games we play anyway, and we are gamers ourselves. Like we think about it like, if we didn't do this, would we want to play this or would we want to do this stuff? And so we always kind of approach it from that approach. We also, and this is a weird sort of dynamic, but like from a preservation perspective, we always kind of view it like, well, we have to kind of get it right the first time, not necessarily in spaceship, but in the collections, because once it's burned on a disc, the disc will last for a long time, or the cartridge will last for. But if we rely on patches or updates and things like that, those are digital, and when those stores go away, those updates go away too, right? They disappear forever, and so we try to nail it right the first time, so that the thing that you have is, what the experience is, and you can keep it, forever. And, like we do, like 10 years from now, you want to dig out a game of ours or a collection of ours and be able to play it. That's the experience, right? You don't have to say, oh man, I wish that content update would have, I still have that because it adds like, a bunch of content stuff. Like, no, like we try to get it all on the first go, and that's just a goal of ours. And so I think those two combinations just really drive it home that when we release a game, it's really the best that we can do in the time and in this sort of situation we have. We put our hearts and souls into. We do 110% for sure. And I think our fans, know that, which is why they follow us and they buy our products and things like that. And we'll only continue to do that. And I think it's, in a cheesy way, we sort of love what we do, and we love games in general, right? Like it's just, that's what we do. Like after my day of work, I go and I sit down and I go play some games, much to the chagrin folks. But I know Dave and Jeremy are big on that. I see Dave with his arcade 1-up cabinet in the back, right? And he was so giddy because there's one weekend, the other weekend, some weekends back, he got that. He finally got a PlayStation 5, I think, right? You got a PlayStation 5. And so he was just giddy, right? He was just like so excited. Like he's going to have a good weekend, right?
It was a great weekend. Yeah,
that joy, right? That joy for games playing and just the love of the industry and what we do, I think helps drive us to put that energy and excitement into the products that we release. So,
and that, man, it's so great to hear that, man. A lot of these companies be about, just the money and, just releasing unfinished products, man. Just to hear a company cares and takes that into consideration means a lot from a consumer standpoint. I want to ask you guys, what made you guys, put it on Game Pass and deal with Xbox first?
Well, that was a simple one. That because it was a Microsoft project as well, right? It's a collaboration with Warner Brothers and Xbox.
Right.
And
Okay.
Xbox, Microsoft were doing a big, they have a big push by around Space Jam in general, and not necessarily just from the movie perspective, but because LeBron is really big on just like game development. He's very interested in that. And I think that's why you see that theme in the movie about his son in the movie being a game maker.
Okay.
You know, he did a lot of collaborations, and Microsoft did a lot of collaborations where we had, you know, sort of classes to teach younger kids and folks how to make games and how games are developed throughout this last year in conjunction with Space Jam. And so I think that's what sort of grabbed our interest too. It wasn't just like a standard situation where, oh, this is like another licensed game for a movie. It was the contest aspect, and also the aspect that both Microsoft and LeBron and other folks were interested in educating kids and getting these sort of seminars and classes together to teach kids about game development and how games are developed and get them interested in the field. That whole thing kind of really, you know, is a great, because we need the new generation of folks coming in. We need the excitement. We need people to sort of understand and get that glow in their eyes when they see games and the magic behind the curtain, right, of how games are made, and not us old curmudgeons who have been around for a while, right? So I think that whole aspect was really cool. But to answer your sort of question, because Microsoft was such a major partner, that's sort of what made it an Xbox exclusive, and they wanted to get it on Game Pass as an exclusive. Obviously, that's a big service for them. They want to promote as much as possible. But I think the great thing that came out of that is, while it was Game Pass exclusive for the first couple weeks,
Right.
it's now they were kind enough to like now give it away free to everyone who owns an Xbox, which is you don't see that, right? That's really neat. And, you know, that was really exciting for us, not from the standpoint that a lot more people can play the game and see our stuff because they don't have to pay, but just the thought of a company as big as Microsoft, which doesn't have to do that, right? They don't have
Right.
they don't have to give it free, but you know, they wanted this to be about the whole positive vibes of game development and learning about that, and echo the messages in the movie. And, you know, we want everyone to be able to play this game regardless of if you can afford it or not, or whatever you're doing. So, you know, kudos to Microsoft for, you know, letting that happen and giving it away free. For those who haven't downloaded Space Jam, if you're watching this, you can download it free. Just go to the Xbox store and search for Space Jam, and you can download it and own it for free. It doesn't go away. You'll earn it for forever. So definitely do it.
And no, this isn't an ad. This isn't an ad, people. People ask me all the time, you always give Microsoft so much credit on the Game Pass. It's just so awesome. I love both systems.
It's a good service. I think all of us.
It's a good service.
Yeah,
man.
all of
It's
us.
just, oh man,
Yeah,
It's good. It's good,
great,
especially
man.
like for people who can't don't want to or can't afford like $60, $70 for games now. Like the value that you get, and also it allows you to try games that you certainly would not have bought. Like you can try out different things, and maybe you might get surprised and find a game that you like that you wouldn't have bought before. So yeah, kudos to them for all their investments in that. It's definitely a good thing for the industry, I feel, and you know, it's a great service. So
I want to ask you guys, and you know, I want an honest answer from you guys. What is the worst game you ever worked on?
Oh, I have to think about that. Dave and Jeremy are relatively. I don't know what you guys would say because they're relatively different.
Dave was talking about games we made on Core back in the day, and we designed those games. Those were entirely our designs. We had no direction on those, and I would have to tell you, all of them were really bad. they were by and large pretty bad games in terms of balance.
What was the worst one?
But
That's
probably the
Butter Blaster.
Yeah, is that the Star Wars shooting one? No,
that's the one. That's the one I was in as the.
No. That wasn't that bad. No, there were some worse ones than that. But yeah, I definitely the games that I designed were the worst ones. Nah, Death Orb was classic, bro.
What about you, Steven? What's the worst game you might have worked on?
Man, I had I don't know. Like I'm trying to think. I probably have to say that like, and it's not because of like ended up bad, but I think some of the Marvel games I worked on could have been better. And I don't think it's because of any sort of lack of skill or anything like that. It's just that, and I think that was that era during where licensed games were had to be made very quickly, and budgets weren't super big and things like that. It's not like today when you get like the Batman Arkham Asylums and things like that, where they're like now licensed games are proven that like you can spend the time, you can do AAA games, like that's okay. You can spend the money on that, and people, as long as the game is great and the character is interesting, people will invest in that and play it. But that back then, the development cycles were really challenging, and we had to do we had to release these games on every platform, right? And it was especially difficult during transitions. Like one time, I mean, just to give you context that makes it challenging, like it was on the tail end of, I think, the PSP, and then the 3DS the Nintendo 3DS was coming out, right? And so we had to make this conscious effort where, even though we were working on the PSP games, we stopped them, and we decided to switch them over to 3DS. And the time that it took to try to do that was difficult and things like that. So there's all these challenges with licensed games. Also, the fact that, like, movies work differently. It's like they film the movie, and then the last part of the movie is all the post effects, right? You got your visual effects and your special effects and things like that. Games, we can't, we had polish at the end, but we need to know what things look like, right? So if you're working with a licensor, and I was like, okay, we're building X, and they're like, we don't know what X looks like yet, so just do your best. And then you build X, and then later on, right before the movie comes out, X looks like Y. And you're like, what? And so I think that's sort of what happens. And then because of that, it causes people to play things safe. And I think that's why that era, I think everyone was guilty of this, that the licensed games didn't necessarily bring a lot to the table, right? It's like it relied on the fact that you really like the movies, you wanted to play some sort of experience, and we kind of go from there. But
I gotta say, like, one thing I've definitely learned in my short time in the industry is that I used to think, and I think most gamers do, I used to think that games were what the developers intended, like in all respects, that's what they wanted to make. And what I've learned is that that's not almost ever the case. Like, we are limited by time, and we're limited by resources. And we make the best game that we can in the amount, in like the framework we're given. And that's not always, in fact, it's rarely what we wish we could make, given infinite time and resources.
Yeah. Just like he's saying, like, I've always said, and it's sort of half truth, but like, given enough money and time and resources, you can make a good game, right? Like, you'll get eventually to a good game 9 times out of 10. The challenge isn't that. The challenge of game development is making the best game that you can within constraints, whether that's time and like Jeremy said, resources, budgets and things like that. Generally, you can only have 2 of the 3, right? So you have to choose, and that's what I think people forget. I was sort of tweeting the other day about my lack of love, even though we all used to be in games journalism, my lack of modern day games journalism, because it's all about clicks now, and sort of oftentimes belittling or putting down games unnecessarily. And I'm not saying that you can't dislike a game. You have every right to dislike a game, and especially speak with your wallets and don't buy it, right, if you don't like it. So there's nothing wrong with that. I always have issue with the fact that people forget that there are people who create these games, who work hard on these games, and may have put in countless hours to get it out there. And then what they're hit with is everyone like trashing their product, and unnecessarily, in an unnecessary way, instead of providing constructive criticism or feedback that can be iterated on or fixed, they kind of just unnecessarily bash it for hits or likes and things like that. And that's very hurtful to these teams. It's not good. And I think we have to learn as an industry of fans that focus. I mean, not that you have to just focus all on the good, but like, as we said, especially for me in the magazine days, we had a limited number of pages. And I always said to our teammates, I'm like, yes, we need to cover the big titles and talk about them fairly if they're not good. But if you have a choice between game A that is not good and game B that is pretty good, why don't you cover game B, and share a good game with more people who might not have seen it, right? And that's how I approach a lot of these things. I don't think it's necessary to go to that level to, to talk down to a lot of these games. It's sort of unnecessary. The teams already know it. The teams feel it. But 9 times out of 10, they've tried their best to get what's out there, and they'll try to fix it. But, give them the benefit of doubt and just remember that there's people,
It's crazy that you went into that, because I wanted to get to that. Like the feeling of when you worked on a game and put your time into it, and it's ill received by the consumers. I want to hear from Dave. Like, what is that like for you when that happened?
That's funny. I was wondering, like with Space Jam, I never really even, it never really hit me. Like I read some reviews. Some people liked it a lot. Some people didn't. I am thrilled that some people liked it. Yeah, I'm thrilled that your kids loved it, and enjoyed it. And the fact that you like it, that's all that matters to me. If there's a small group of people that really love it, then I'm happy. I feel like that's great. Sure, I'd like everybody to love it, but it didn't affect me that much. Like I read it and I was like, yeah, there's some good constructive criticism, or I don't agree with what this person is saying, but it wasn't as difficult as I thought it might be. So yeah, and I'm not sure why. I was expecting to maybe be crushed by some reviews, but people have good points and reasons for making things out. Maybe they don't understand the whole story. Like, this is a very small scope project, right? They wanted a longer game. It took them 30 minutes to finish, but the original scope of the project was a 15-minute game, and I feel like we delivered a 30 to 60-minute game in the end, and we sort of overachieved in that sense. Absolutely. So I understand where they're coming from, and it totally makes sense, that some people feel that way. But I know the truth behind it, so it's okay.
What about you, Jeremy? What are your feelings when games are received?
Well, when I watch people play Space Jam on Twitch, which was the thing I was most excited about, I think I was first of all thrilled. Like, just seeing people play your game is a great feeling. But when they don't play it right, when they don't know all the moves, and they play all the way through without doing everything you can possibly do, or having what I feel is the most fun, I feel like that's where I wish I could jump in and help them out, teach them how to play it differently, maybe better. And that honestly, like that is the best lesson you can get is to watch people play your game. And if we had more time, like we were saying before, we could go back and guide people inside the game to do better. And we try to apply that to the next project and improve ourselves every time we do this. But that's the one thing. But when I do see people discover something, like there was somebody who discovered on Twitch live that you could throw the ball at a bad guy and it will bounce back and it will always come right in front of you. So you can then punch the ball and you can get into this rhythm where the ball is always coming back, and you'll get bonus points if you do that time in a loop. He freaked out and I was like, yes, somebody discovered it. That's the feeling I was hoping everybody would have. But to see that at least a few people discovered things like that, that brings me great joy. Yeah,
there's stuff in there that, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people found, but like things that Dave and Jeremy added in there for bonus stuff that, like, in the museum level, if you jump up into the pillars section and you stand up there, you get a bonus point.
Yeah, if you jump up on top of the urn,
yeah,
you get a special bonus.
King of the Hill, I think.
I'm gonna have to go back and do that, man. I need to do that. Okay.
Yeah, you get bonus points.
Yeah, there's things or like if you destroy all the barrels without getting knocked down, little things like that. There's like a cactus in one level that keeps spitting out health drops, which is pretty funny. But there's a lot of little things in there that we'd hope that people would discover, and they will eventually discover. But just little nice surprises that you might have not found it out the first or second time you played, but maybe if you dig it back out later on and you play it a few more times, you're like, oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. And having those little surprises is nice to be able to include. So,
man, I love it.
We wish we wish we had more time for this, because a lot of those came in later in the development cycle. And what if we did this? We could get bonuses for this and this. Once all the systems were in place and the game was flowing, a lot of those ideas came in, and we didn't have time to do everything we wanted to.
I don't think there's any developer.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any developer says like, I wish I had more time, right? Like that's the normal, like there's two things. It's like the things you say, I wish I had more time. And the second thing is a lot of times, and this haunts me too, is I just see the problems, right? Like most people are not privy to the problems and things, because they don't come across them in a normal sort of thing. But there's things that we see and things, and every project is always like that, where like we just see like, oh man, I wish I could have done that, or oh, that could have been better. And so it's like, it's unfortunate, but I guess that just shows that you care a bit, right? Because if you didn't, then you'd just be like, you release it and you're like, whatever. But the fact that you still, when I look at stuff and I'll boot up one of our collections and I'm just like, oh yeah, this, and this. And I'm like, and you learn from it, right? You hope that you can learn from it and you try to improve it.
Exactly.
And that's all you can do, is try to make the next game better, and the things that you learned during the experience of developing the previous one, you utilize, and then you get stuff done faster, and then you can include even more stuff, right? So that's hopefully how it goes.
I love it, man. Again, I just want to salute y'all on a great game, man. I love it.
Thank you.
My kids love it. Man, I'm gonna be honest. I hated the first one, the original game. I love this one 1,000,000% better. I gotta be honest, man. 1,000,000% better, man. I cut it on thinking, oh my God, I hope it's not like the first one. And I cut it out. I was like, oh my God, it's not like the first one. It's awesome. And man, like it's nostalgia too. And it's that arcade feel that I love. I know y'all work with SNK. I love SNK and what they bring to the table. I like the Bloodstain games that they put out and things like that, man. So I just love that nostalgic feel of the arcade style game. I love how it plays, of the controls, man. I just love it. I love the reaction, because all like y'all know, all brawlers don't control the same, man. I can't explain that. I know y'all know what I mean. It's just the feel, And this game just nails it, man. It nails it for me. It nails it.
Thank you.
Well,
really glad to hear that. I'll tell you one thing that I don't know if anybody's discovered yet, but we discovered about 2 weeks before we released the game was a little mini game that actually existed inside the game. You can try this with your kids if you want to. If you load up Bugs and Lola and you stand on either side of the screen and have one of them throw the ball and the other one punch it back, if you can time it right, they can get a game of tennis going, where you punch right when the ball's at your punch, zone, hit the button back, and you'll get bonus points every single time. It goes up higher and higher and higher, and you can see what kind of score you guys can get. It's actually a lot of fun.
Oh man, I'm definitely going to try that. That sounds awesome, man. I love it because, again, as a consumer, I'm not privy to any of this stuff. I don't know how these games work. Like, I just know, it might take a while for them to come out. They put them out, and you either love it or you don't. But just to hear the backstory of how things went into this particular game, and just not even just taking COVID into consideration, man. Like, it's just crazy. Was having 4 months to do this, and y'all just not be in the same country, let alone the same studio. Man, just hats off to you guys, man. And again, just thank y'all for coming on this show, man, and just shedding light and just giving background on the process of things, and shedding light on you guys as well as what y'all bring to the industry. People like myself appreciate everything that you all do, man. And man, again, just thank y'all, man.
Thanks.
For real.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. I mean, thank you for starting up a channel and taking the time to share your kids playing the game. It's stuff like that I think Dave was talking about that just makes it sort of worthwhile, right? It's the look of enjoyment on people's faces, because it's easy enough to see negativity and bad things about games or the industry and stuff like that, but it's those little moments the joy or the happiness, because that's really what we want, right? We want to release something that elicits a positive emotion or hopefully a smile or happiness on people. And that's what makes all the hard work worthwhile. So when folks like you post, videos of things like that show people enjoying the games, that means a lot. And it makes our, the hard work and the long hours, worthwhile. So thank you for that. And thank you for having us on. We definitely appreciate it. Best of luck on your channel. And I hope it grows into something bigger and better. And, thanks for taking the time to chat with us about Digital Eclipse and Space Jam and the other games.
Absolutely, man. I look forward to anything that y'all are working on, whether it be retro stuff, new ideas. I'm ready to get my hands on it, man. I'm following the Digital Eclipse page. I'm following you guys. I'm hands on, man. I'm ready.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you having us on.
Man, I appreciate y'all again, man. Y'all enjoy y'all evening. Again, keep up the good work and everything that y'all do. Kudos to y'all, flowers to y'all. And again, man, just much love on the game, man.
Thank you.
Cool.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks.
Have a great rest of the week. And again, thanks for having us on, and here's to the future.
All right, y'all be good, man. Thank y'all so much.
Okay.
No worries. Take care.
Thanks.
All right,
See you
peace.
later.
Bye-bye.